Hi, this is Paul Palmer. I want to come back today to a topic we've discussed before, and that's change management. You see, there are many aspects to change management. The changes that we implement as part of our quality management system in pharmaceutical manufacturing and distribution are only part of the picture. Have you considered in your organization the changes that are impacted by changing in team members? You see, when you have a new team member come in, it's not just a case of, well, everything goes on the way that it did when the previous person came in. Because if you think about it, when you bring in a senior team member, then they'll comply initially, or they'll usually look and see what's going on first before they make any changes. Similarly, or maybe in contrast, when you get a new person coming at a lower level, maybe it's a trainee, they're going to do as they're told, hopefully. But it's unlikely that they're going to be as let's think. It's unlikely that they're going to be as effective or as efficient as the person that's left. So you maybe have somebody that's been in the job 4 or 5 years, and you bring in a trainee that's maybe just come out of university or from school even, and maybe they're on an apprenticeship, have no knowledge whatsoever about your business. Now, what changes do you put in place? Think about it. Make sure you don't just carry on with business as normal, because if you do, the new person is likely to fail. And that's not because you're doing a bad job necessarily, but if you assume, or I don't like assuming, of course, if you assume that the new person is going to do exactly what they're supposed to do based on the SOPs and based on the initial training, to the level that the person that's just left, that's been there doing it 5 years, and knows where the gaps are, and knows where to fill the extra bits, and knows who to chase up when there's a problem, well, you're planning for failure, aren't you? Or should I say, you're not planning. Failing to plan is planning to fail. Traditional terminology, but in pharmaceuticals, it really does mean that you could fail. If you've got the person, say the team member that left was the one that was taking the samples. I started in microbiology, so let's start with microbiology. So you have somebody that's been taking the samples. Maybe they've got a promotion and they're doing validation instead. I say that because that's what I did. So they're going in and they're taking the samples, fresh, new, and they go and they take them to the lab and somebody else tests them because they haven't had their training in the testing yet, and they fail. So what happens now? Well, the samples you've just taken, well, you've been running the business based on the risk assessment and knowledge that everything has been passing for the last 5 years, maybe 3, and now you've got a failure. What do? Panic. Root cause analysis. Where could they come from? All the different areas. But what it really is you didn't plan for change. You didn't plan for the extra support that you'd need to give to that new trainee. Yes, you've showed them once, but it takes more than once to learn aseptic technique. And of course, when you're doing it and you're showing them and they're about to do something wrong and you tell them, what happens when they go and take it themselves? Well, maybe they forget one particular step, or maybe without realizing they touched something with the scissors in error. And that just happens to put 10 to the 3 of aspergillus into the product, the bit of sample that you've taken, and you exceed your limits. Or maybe they were not quite as fast at doing something and they got more exposure. Or maybe they forgot 2 of the plates that they left and didn't realize it was critical, so they went back 10 hours later instead of 1. So imagine you've got an experienced team member and your new one's got the induction to go through. Good. So somebody in your team that's about to leave hands over what they've been doing. Now, are they as committed to the job as they were when they were staying? Probably not. So what should you do? Well, maybe you should give them one of the roles that they're used to doing and one of the team members, maybe the supervisor, maybe the trainer that's staying, the job of giving the induction and training to the new person. Think about change in more detail than just, this is the SOP we're changing and this is the system that's getting updated. Think about the whole organization. Think about what happens when your team members change. I know you have to use change control to change the named person because then there's regulatory impact. But maybe at a closer, a smaller scale level, you should be considering what happens when anybody changes. When a team member changes, what's the plan you should be putting in place? Okay, they go through their induction and they get the list of SOPs. I mentioned before about the 142 SOPs I got on joining a new organization with no input. I was a contractor, so that is a different situation, but it still makes a difference. The amount of input will then be successful if the person takes it on board and goes and gets their additional information, as I would. But if they don't, and they're new and they have no idea where to go, and they lack confidence because they've joined in a new organization and have been introduced to 30 new people that they've never spoken to before, and they probably didn't remember the names that you gave them as they went round, maybe only remembered half of the faces. And then, of course, they're in a new building, so maybe they get lost there too. I do remember getting lost in my first job, and I went round in circles because it was a block. But I didn't realize that that block was actually a P, not a circle. And I had to go off the P. But I was new. Somebody guided me which way to go. And that's what you need to consider. Who's going to be the guide? Who's going to give the new employee direction? How does your system accommodate the change from a 5 years experience starting from nothing? Are there extra checks that you need to put in place there? Have you got varying levels of supervision until you demonstrate their competence? Or should I say, until they demonstrate competence and you have the evidence? Make sure the systems that you use are ready for change. It's Paul Palmer talking about pharmaceuticals and employees, but if you're in medical devices, you've got the same. If you're in manufacturing, you're doing the same. So really, this does have a wider scope. Talk to you soon.